Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk. And the fact is, I couldn't get luckier than this. At a time when our politicians seem to be debating whether pre-election or opinion polls are a good idea or an evil that distorts our elections, none else but the guru of gurus when it comes to opinion polling, Sir David Butler. Wonderful to have you as a guest on Walk the Talk.
Sorry,
Because you explained to the world what a swing means.
yes, I suppose I have two words in the world that I have been responsible for. I didn't invent either of them. The first is swing. People talked about the swing of the pendulum between one election and next.
Well, in India we talk about swing of the cricket ball.
Yes, well, but that's equally there, but the actual swing from one side to the other. They talked about it in the past, but they hadn't made it systematic. And when I was a very young man, I wrote an article which talked about swing, and it got caught up by other people. And it becomes absolutely central to the interpretation of elections, particularly when you have two dominant parties. So that's one word. The other word I'm responsible for is psephology. Now, it was only an Oxford joke. I wasn't present when somebody said, we're making a habit of the systematic study of elections, so we should have a word for it. And a classical scholar said, well, the Greeks voted by dropping a psephos into an urn.
Like pebbles.
A pebble. And psephos is the Greek for pebble. And so there it was, and we made a joke of it, psephiatry, psychoanalysis and other things when we were working on elections in the early 1950s. And it just got caught up as a kind of joke word. I've always been rather embarrassed because I don't think it is a science. There are quite a lot of gimmicks one knows in studying elections, but it's not a science at all. But I'm rather pompous. I rather regret having put it into currency.
But you've made a science out of it because you've explained British elections to BBC's viewers for more than 60 years now.
Yes, I was very lucky. When I was very young, they put on a program, the first time, a British election results program in 1950. And I was asked to take part in it because I'd already written one or two things on the subject. And it was rather nice. I was rather well typecast because I was doing what I would have done in private if I hadn't been in front of the camera. I'd hardly ever been in front of the camera. But people were interested in somebody who could make, in reasonable, simple terms, sense of the quite complicated statistics that were flowing across the screen. And so I just was lucky, and for 30 years I did the basic quantitative analysis of what was happening in the country as the results came in over a 24-hour period. And that, of course, was very lucky because it led me to travel the world. I went to Australia and I came to India. Pronnoy invited me to come and talk about the study of elections in 1983, and then invited me to come back in 84 for the 84 election. And I helped as a backroom boy for 20 years with Pronnoy and his colleague Ashok Lahiri and other people in NDTV after it got founded, helping on election nights and trying to make simple sense of complicated data.
And three of you developed Index of Opposition Unity. You, Pronnoy Roy and Ashok Lahiri.
Well, that was essentially Pronnoy. It's Pronnoy's genius to do that. I'm terribly impressed. I've just in India.
I know Pronnoy is not embarrassed that disappears on his channel, but it's okay.
No, but I came out here just for a week just to see Pronnoy and other old friends in Delhi, and find myself talking to him a lot about what could be done next time. But more than that, I'm overwhelmingly impressed by the development technologically of what is going on in this country, in NDTV's offices. The quantity of people there, the number of channels involved with him and with other companies. It's an extraordinary revolution from the extremely primitive world I came out to in 1984, when Doordarshan was very reluctantly.
So has our media and politics moved on. So tell us a bit about this Index of Opposition Unity.
Well, that was just a simple way of how to deal with the situation when there were many parties. Congress was the dominant party. It's no longer quite so appropriate. I mean, Congress is still there as one of the dominant parties. but it was very difficult to cope with things. I'd come from a world where swing was quite simple because we had, for 30 years, 40 years, totally dominant Conservative and Labour, two parties. Other parties didn't really matter. In India, there were always other parties that mattered, and you had to simplify it. So you made Congress the basis, and then you assume the others were against you or against Congress, and you had to have some measure of how that should be worked out.
So no other country has banned opinion polls except Australia in the last 3 days.
Oh no, France and Germany have had bans of some sort. I think there have been attempts quite widely.
But France and Germany had bans in the past, or do they continue now?
I don't actually know the legal. I don't really know enough about this to say legally. I just know that in Western democracies, the banning polls, one, is offensive in terms of civil liberties, and two, is probably ineffective, because people do secret polls or say they've done secret polls if they aren't public ones open to scrutiny.